Okay, welcome to Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree, where we talk about great gospel insights through great stories and help you find entertainment that is both true and beautiful. I'm your host, Liz Busby, and I'm a writer of science fiction fantasy and a reviewer of books. Nathan, you go next.
I'm a speech therapist, and my hobby is I have a website where I design gospel study aids and a custom designed scriptures called the Story Guide Scriptures.
And then we have Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Ortner. I'm a constitutional lawyer by day, and I'm a show tunes aficionado and a big fan of pop culture.
And Carl.
Hi, my name is Carl Cranny. I'm a professional theologian who likes to explore religion and pop culture sorts of issues.
And finally, Ben.
And I just talk about stuff that I don't actually know anything about and have no business being here. I just like talking about stuff, so thank you.
So self-deprecating, Ben.
What? Like I have a degree in film studies? Come on. But like this is me just trying. I just really like these people and these topics. That's all I got.
There we go. All right, so this is our first episode of this podcast. We're trying out to talk about the gospel in pop culture, and today's episode we're going to be talking about Encanto. But first, we're going to open with our best book segment, where we each recommend something that we've been reading, watching, or listening to. Mine is I just finished it's like halfway between creative nonfiction, like a memoir, and a novel. So some of it's fictionalized, but some of it's true. And it's called Irreversible Things by Lisa Van Orman Hadley. And she's an LDS author, and it's just her writing about her childhood in Florida, and then also about her growing up in Salt Lake and then dealing with her dad's Alzheimer's as he got older. It's really interesting, and it's really short, so it's nice that you can read little segments of it at a time, and they're little short essays, so highly recommend.
My recommendation, I actually have to thank Liz for this recommendation. It's a video game, It Takes Two. It's a cooperative platforming game where you and one other person are playing a husband and a wife who are going through marital difficulties, and you get transformed into toys and have to traverse around the house and ultimately save your marriage. Has very, very positive gospel themes of love and repairing relationships. And I found it very heartwarming. And the style is very much like a Pixar or Disney movie in a video game form. And it's really an ode to video games, an ode to relationships. It's really delightful and wonderful.
Marriage in a video game.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that we need to play more video games. Like they strengthen marriages, right? Like that's where we're going.
One game of the year, it's great.
Well, it has a great mix. Also, the gameplay it's cooperative, and then there's occasional competitive mini games, and so it's a great mix of cooperative and competitive. And the gameplay and the story fit really well together. It's brilliant. It's beautifully done. I really loved it. It was my favorite video game of the year and one of the best.
What console is it on?
It's on Xbox and PlayStation.
And
PC as well. It's not on Switch, unfortunately. I hope it comes on Switch.
I hope it comes to Switch soon.
Yeah,
I'm going to look up
Switch, but it's not on Switch.
Okay.
I'm listening to an online audio course by a guy named Kevin Flanagan. It's about the ancient Irish law system. It's actually interestingly similar to Israel's reign of judges, and I'm doing it because it's interesting, but also because I'm walking some of my older kids. We homeschool, and so I'm walking them through the law and the Constitution, and so I wanted to show them something really, really different, just to give them something to contrast it with.
That sounds really fascinating, actually.
It is fascinating.
It does. Okay, Ben?
So I am reading a book, I'm almost done, called The Knowledge Gap. I feel guilty on a pop culture one, not talking about nonfiction, but I'm a teacher guy. And the book is written from the perspective of we all need to love Edie Hirsch, who is the knowledge guy. And he's all about like, stop teaching skills to kids and just teach them about cool stuff. And by the way, I think there's a lot to that, but it's very clear that that's kind of the angle the book takes. But the first 5 chapters actually have a really good review of like, why are we teaching reading the way that we do? It's so broken and we all kind of know it. And
Amen.
Everybody's like, well, and so my favorite... Well, hold on. It depends on which kind you favor. The problem is everyone is agreed that we teach it the wrong way until you start getting specific. And they're like, wait, no, you're doing the opposite. So I love the book when it started talking about how learning styles are total myths, because they are, and they're not real. They don't exist. And I loved it even more when it said the best approach to reading is a lot of phonics at very young ages. And yes, it's boring, and get over it, because it really helps kids.
Yeah.
And comprehension strategies aren't really a thing. Like, they don't really help. Like, if you teach a kid what like a caption is, like, or you could just teach them stuff and have captions be there, and they will pick up very quickly what captions are for. Edie Hirsch is the guy that came up with all of this stuff. And he's kind of selling his curriculum on the down low. But I also think the book makes some really good points. And so if you're interested in like a quick recap of like the curriculum wars over the past 20 years from a very clear perspective, this is a good one to go to.
Opening a new tab right now.
Okay, Carl, you're our last one.
Can I just say that I think last month was amazing as far as science fiction on the small screen. We had like Star Trek, we had Wheel of Time, we had The Witcher, The Book of Boba Fett. But my recommendation is actually one that I think has flown under a lot of people's radars. It's the Netflix reboot of Lost in Space. It only had 3 seasons, but it's like super family friendly and fun and enjoyable, and it's got just some great writing and moments, and is kind of everything you would want to have in a science fiction show that you would sit down and watch with all of your family. And I think it's one that just hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but they had their 3rd and final season last month, and I really enjoyed it.
And this is not the one with Joey Tribbiani. This is a different, like, this is another reboot. Because, like, when I was young, there was, like, a reboot.
Yeah, there was a movie, but no.
Yeah, they don't talk about that movie. With Gary Oldman as Dr. Smith, no.
Not that one, okay.
Yeah, this is Netflix. It's a TV show. So they've had 3 seasons of, I think, 8 or 10 episodes each. And it follows the basic premise, right? The Robinson family is going out into space. In this one, though, they're like part of a mass colony moving to Alpha Centauri. And the science is a little incorrect, which bothers, well, some sci-fi gets it right, and Star Trek used to all the time, but now they don't, and it bothers me immensely.
You're man.
But every episode, there's a new problem. The Robinsons all figure out, and different people have different moments to shine, and like the oldest daughter is a doctor, the mother is like a former astronaut, the dad's an ex-Navy SEAL, so they all have their moments to shine, but they all always come together and figure it out and work together as a team, and it's super fun and really great low-key science fiction, and I think more people, especially for a podcast like this, more people should watch a show like that. So
that's an awesome. So, Carl, you have to tell me if you feel like I'm wrong on this, but I feel like the only thing I know about classics being brought to the small screens is that no fan will ever say that it's good enough. And so you just kind of have to assume that everyone's going to be mad about it and watch it yourself to find out, because all the reviews are going to be totally like off the wall crazy.
Yeah, that's probably true. But they changed this one enough, and it's been long enough since the original. Yeah. And with the terrible movie that you mentioned before, like that we just don't speak of, it had a chance to be its own thing in the same basic story arc plot line, and it works. It's kind of like Battlestar Galactica. Like, I think everybody agrees that the reboot from the Sci-Fi Channel was light years better than the original.
It was its own thing. Yeah.
I've not seen that one.
Oh dear. Rails? We need no rails.
They changed some of the colors, but
we need roads.
I saw somebody ask Brandon Sanderson. They were like, "Hey, why did you mess up Wheel of Time in this new series?" And he was like, "All right, first of all, I don't think they messed it up. Second of all, it wasn't me. I gave advice. They took some. They didn't take some. And third, I told them it doesn't matter what you do. Some fans won't be happy." And I haven't seen Wheel of Time because I haven't read the books yet, and I want to do it a little bit in order. But he was like, I thought it was fine. Like, calm down. Everybody's just kind of got their knickers in a twist all the time about anything that they love. Just enjoy the stupid thing. Anyway.
Star Wars fans are the worst also with Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian and the
It's so hard. It's so tough.
I just can't wait for them to do a Galaxy Quest version of fantasy.
That would be amazing.
I've got a book recommendation for you on that, but we'll move on to Encanto and come back to that next time. So we're going to be talking about Encanto, which is the 2021 Disney movie about Mirabelle, who is born into a magical family. Everybody has magical powers in her family except her. She has no magical powers. And the movie is all about her relationships with the family and about basically trying to save the family. So what did y'all think about it? Oh, also full spoilers. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's great.
Thank
It's
you.
short. Lin-Manuel Miranda songs. Yeah. You should just watch it and
they all die at the end.
Come back here. Okay, so what did we all think?
Then when Voldemort comes in.
I can start. I mean, I love this movie. I'm a big Lin-Manuel Miranda fan. I've loved everything he's done. I think this was an excellent movie. Really kind of taking what he did with Moana, where he was involved early on, but not in the very beginning of the movie. And here he kind of was from the ground up building this movie. I think the music is great. The characters are well developed. I love
the dancing was amazing.
The dancing?
Yeah, I was watching a featurette and they said that they tried to like animate it like it was a stage show. And you can see that. You can feel the big dance numbers.
Yeah. And they use different musical styles influenced by the country of Colombia, different types of music, different dancing techniques. I thought it was just a very good view into a different culture and a really compelling story that resonated really deeply with me.
I love that.
Yeah, that's what I really liked too.
There wasn't a traditional villain. There was no one bad person. It was all the conflict came from basically good people bumping up against each other in their efforts to do the right thing and failing. Yeah. Like real life.
Yeah, like real life and like misunderstanding each other, but not in that cheesy movie way where like if you would just talk, then you would understand.
Right.
Whereas like it makes sense that you guys don't understand why you're doing this, like the real way that we interact with other people.
And in spite of communicating, you're still not getting each other. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll say I gave it an A-. It was great. I loved it. I could feel the Lin-Manuel Miranda magic in it, both in the lyrics, and the songs were hilarious and well written. The characters were fantastic.
Oh, the characters.
I took mild issue with some of the plot, especially at the end, where it just left me going, "Oh, that ended well." I'm not sure how did it end? What happened?
Yeah, the ending was a little. What did you guys think?
I don't know, like maybe that's just me being picky. And it also might have been that like my kids were like trying to eat my toes or something. I don't know. But like, so maybe I wasn't paying attention, but it was like very clear setup, cool characters with very clear backgrounds. Like everything was moving and grooving for me. And then it was like, and we'll all just wrap it in a bow and not ask many questions. And that's how it felt at the end. I will say,
I thought I did. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That was my takeaway. I'm going to be the contrarian here apparently. Cause I liked it, but it felt obvious to me that the entire thing could have gone through like one more cycle of rewrites and drafts and things. Even the music, I felt was like not. Yeah, I mean, far be it from this. Feels like I look at one of Michelangelo's lesser-known art pieces and be like, "Oh, you didn't do David. What is wrong with you this time?" Right? Like for me critiquing Lin-Manuel Miranda, but the whole thing just felt like they didn't phone it in, but things could have been a little tighter here and there. And I agree with Ben that the ending kind of shows up, and once Mirabelle realizes sort of the main point of toxicity in their family is her abuela, the grandmother. It takes about 10 minutes for the grandmother to realize that, and then suddenly, boom, everything is solved. And I felt like there could have been a little more to sort of make that transition, but at that point, we're already an hour and 40 minutes into the movie, and so, I think I would give it maybe a B-, which is still, of course, a very high passing grade. So, but
just to be clear, I'm not saying it's Brother Bear. Okay, I'm not I'm not saying that Lin-Manuel Miranda is now Dave. What's his name? Who am I thinking of? The guy that did Tarzan and then did Brother Bear. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I have no idea.
Phil Collins,
the musician guy. Phil Collins, not Bill. I didn't know he did Brother Bear. Phil Collins, who was amazing, and I loved him, and I didn't even mind Brother Bear that much, but it was just so different from Tarzan.
I'll say in my opinion, the ending. I agree that there's a little bit. I mean, it is rushed in some ways, but there is a little more. Compared to something like Frozen, for instance, where in Frozen, Elsa gets frozen and then 5 minutes later she's unfrozen. There's this instant or tangled, which I love, but there's almost instantly everything is fixed after the kind of conflict at the end. I thought there was a little more consequence here, but not enough. But still, so what happens in the movie is the house falls apart and then is rebuilt, not with magic, but they actually rebuild it. Their neighbors, the community comes together to help them rebuild their house. And then only once it's all rebuilt without magic, then the magic comes back once they put the final touches on the house. And I thought that was a nice touch. It doesn't just come back as soon as they heal their conflict. They have to first work together. They have to get the community involved, and then the magic returns. And so I thought that was better than average for a Disney movie ending, actually, as far as
kind of
showing consequence of the conflict.
Well, random association that reminds me of Christmas. My oldest told me Christmas feels different now that I'm 12, and we talked about how she says like how the magic can go away, and we told her the secret to getting the magic back is becoming Santa, is being the one who gives presents and puts the work into it, and that's how you get the magic back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that the ending where the house is repaired goes along with the theme, which is the true gifts are each other, not the random magic things that the miracle candle has given us. And once we acknowledge that, we're happy to build a house and go to live our mundane lives with each other. And that's where the magic happens, is when we acknowledge that each other are the true gifts. Not this other sort of imposition from some outside source. And so I did think that moment, you're right, was kind of earned. Everybody's like, hey, it turns out the magic's gone. We still love each other. The community still loves us and wants to support us. So we're going to do this. And then, boom, the magic returns. And that works really well because they learned their lesson and then got the reward because they learned it in the correct way.
I also love that part, and I love the community and the family, and I think it preaches very good messages about, like, family is what's most important. I think there's kind of a question in my mind about, like, is magic good or is magic not the most important? Like, there's kind of like a,
that was really
you didn't get a
unresolved.
gift because something was broken.
Yeah.
That was a part of the plot that I still am like, so what's her gift? Or does she not need one? But everyone was sad that she didn't get a gift. It didn't seem like it happened in a good way. It actually was just a bad thing, and she just doesn't get one. Like, I think there was a way to navigate that better.
So this is the way I would have redone the ending, is they build the whole house together, and then nobody gets their powers back. They just have to, like, realize that, like, you know what? We just have to actually work together as people. The magic powers are not going to save our family. We don't need them to serve the community because they care about us regardless.
Well,
That's
I totally suspect that was
complex for a Disney movie. I don't know.
The question
I bet that was in the writing room discussion. Like, it feels like that was the call that was made in the last 15 minutes, where it was like, okay, we can't just, like, steal their magic powers. All right, let's just give them back. It'll be fine. Whatever. It's a kid's movie. Whatever. And then it just, like, all the adults are like, what? Right. Exactly.
The question I have is, each character, when they get their magic gift, gets a door that's dedicated to them, and it has a magic place for them that's suited to their personality. And Mirabelle never gets one in the movie. She's in the kids' room, and that's really sad. And so I wonder now, does she get a door?
Or maybe they could have the family construct a door by hand.
Well,
and so I wonder.
I thought the obvious message was that her door is the front door. She's the one who keeps the family together, right? Like,
I didn't even pick
the
up
whole house is
really
I wonder, does she now have to live in the kids' room, or does she have her own space that's designed for her? And that was the one thing I was wondering about at the end of the movie.
When the host says the obvious message, and you go, "Oh, I didn't get the obvious message."
Well, I mean, they give her the doorknob, and that's when she gets to open the door, right?
That actually, that did not occur to me that her door was the front door.
Afterwards,
I looked at my wife. I was like, I don't get it. What's her gift? And she was like, I don't know. To be the fiber for the family's emotional constipation. Like, I don't know. And like, that's where we left it. That's as far as we could go.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I do want to talk about Mirabelle, because the thing that, as I was watching the movie and thinking about this podcast, I was thinking about Mirabelle kind of as a metaphor for, I was thinking specifically single members of the church, but other people who feel like they're left out. Like, sometimes when you're the single member, you can feel like you're left in the kids' room, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're not married when you're 22, then forget it. You're not a grown-up for the rest of your life. And kind of the way they treat Mirabelle is kind of the toxic stories that we do hear about the way people feel like they get treated when they're single in the church. That they're not grown up, they're not contributing, just stay out, let the grown-ups deal with it, you know? So that was what I saw out of the movie.
That's a really cool way to look at it. I would just say anyone who's different.
Yeah. Well, and we got to Bruno too, right?
Don't talk about Bruno.
Which we don't talk about Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno.
I hope we do.
I love her song "Waiting on a Miracle." I think is I love it. It's one of my favorite Disney "I Want" songs now. You know, every hero and a villain, a Disney movie always has an "I Want" song, and I think this one is so powerful. Like the last verse, I want to read the words because I think it goes really well to what you're saying. It says, "Come on, I'm ready. I've been patient and steadfast and steady. Bless me now as you blessed us all those years ago when you gave us a miracle." And then the last line is, "Am I too late for a miracle?" I think that's really powerful. And like you said, it resonates well with anyone who just feels out of place or doesn't feel like they fully belong or they don't have the same gifts or the same opportunities that others have. So I thought that I love your point about that.
And I think that's why it resolves really well in the end, that at least they don't give Mirabelle a power, right? Because like if we said, oh, you went through all these things and now you're rewarded with a power. It's like, no, she's fine without a power.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, people who are different, like Bruno or like Mirabelle are fine. We don't have to necessarily fix that part of them.
And my only issue with that is not what you said. It's that I think they could have driven that point home really, really well. Because there are, without it getting into, by the way, I've seen two takes on this that I really disagree with and it makes me laugh. And then one that I kind of want to engage in a little bit. One take that I've heard is, this is a great movie about cutting out toxic people from your life. And I saw that and I was like, that's just
super
kind of the opposite.
Anyone out. That's the whole point.
Like, no, like they cut out Bruno for like absolutely like terrible reasons. And then they realized, oh, you're not a horrible person. We were horrible. What were we thinking? Like,
right. It's exactly the opposite. It's a movie about, instead of cutting out toxic people, like you could have argued that the abuela was toxic, right? She has these super high standards. Nobody feels like they can be themselves. Everyone feels like they have to be perfect all the time.
She
could argue, we should cut her out of our life because she is making our lives miserable. Instead, we like talk to her and we both move and fix the problem and understand each other.
We literally make a space for each other.
Make a space.
I feel that the counterpart to the abuela would be Mother Gothel from Tangled, who is also super toxic.
Is actually toxic.
In a villainous way. I think it's interesting that in Encanto we can have this redemption arc because it's inadvertent. Like and I think that's a really powerful message as well. Key. We all look at Mother Gothel and immediately, you know, she sings "Mother Knows Best" at the beginning, and you're just like, oh man, this lady is super toxic. Yeah, and I understand like cutting someone like that out of your life, but Mirabelle's
or just making them dissolve into dust.
The grandmother, is such a better look. You are the reason for this, and she comes to the realization and helps her, the grandmother, come to understand the standards that she's had and differently. Like, that's never going to happen to Mother Gothel. She's a more one-dimensional villain, which is what makes this movie much a superior story.
The biggest difference to me is the motives of the character. I mean, Abuela here is doing everything to protect her family. She was there because
she knows what real danger is from previous generation.
Well, and she's afraid, I think, of the miracle falling apart and then the family losing out and potentially, I mean, she escaped danger once. She's worried about that for her family, I think. So I think her motives are just so much purer than someone like Mother Gothel, who's just kind of pure selfishness in the motives. I think she's really wants the best for her family.
And to add to that, I think this is a great one in part because the villain isn't really a villain, but also because the villain's motives are in part, and I want to be careful with this word, but they're informed because of trauma. Like Abuela's been through some real stuff, right? And I didn't think it was tacky. I didn't think it was oversold or overwrought. I felt like it was a very natural, like, we still don't even know who the guys were that like were galloping on horses and all that. Like, it doesn't matter. What we know is that Abuela's been through some stuff.
Her fears aren't angst, they were actual peril. Yeah.
That's right. And so because of that, she's such a sympathetic villain, if you even want to call her a villain. Now, this is a good time to bring up the second take that I've heard, which is there was a fair amount of expressive individualism in this film, to which I would argue yes, there's going to be some in every Disney film. Like that's kind of part of their brand.
The brand.
I don't think it was quite as bad. I don't think it was quite as bad as like Let It Go or like just be you and the world will love you and it's great and like all of that. But I do think there was a little bit, but I would argue that there was the other message that bothers me a little bit more these days. I just had a discussion with my students. These are freshmen who think they want to be teachers. And every one of them say, well, I'll just be really nice to the kids and it'll all work out. and then I say, no, you need to be the authority. And they will tell me like, you can't, that's a bad word. You can't use the word authority. Right. I think the message from this movie that I got is like, and I could feel it pretty early on. It's like, I'm pretty sure that Abuela is the problem here. Right. Like Abuela is the bad guy. Because she's doing something in the background and whatever. And there's always just kind of this subtle, like I cannot think of a Disney movie where an authority figure was a good guy.
The music always slows down when it talks about Abuela.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's stuff like that, right? And it's like, but she's really good and she's holding a family together. And she has a magical flipping house that like saves like
running the town. And
right, like she's amazing. Like we can cut her some slack here. And to be clear, like that tension between authority and generations and all of that is important. It's important to work that out. I just think at some point we can watch a movie other than Dead Poets Society. Like we can actually grow up and say like some authority in our lives is okay. And it's not that, but like I'm also lawful good here, right? Like this is a personal problem.
Well, that comes from section 121, right? Like the proper kind of leadership is the kind that is so righteous that it draws people to it with, I love the phrase, without compulsory means, their dominion will flow unto them forever and ever. And the reason Abuela had the leadership role was a combination of her being the oldest and the person for whom the magic had originally worked. And then she was just kind of coasting on that and hadn't necessarily earned it for all the intervening decades.
Well, see, and I would argue she's earned some of it. She's a good grandma. They love her. She is kind. She protects the family. She is the boss. There's some hierarchy there, right? There's some matriarchal order going on. But I just don't think it's all that. I think some of it is institutional. Some of it is I'm the oldest and so I'm in charge and I do whatever. And I'm just, I don't know, maybe I'm overseeing things because this is the fight that I have on campus all the time. But it felt like that was a little bit of a, like, you should suspect even your grandmother of being an authoritarian, right? Like, and I was like, she's like, well, come on. Like, anyway.
I interpreted it more as like an impulse I felt as a mother where like, everybody just hold still and I will take care of everything. And that's kind of how she is to Mirabelle. Like, just stay out. I've got this under control. Like, I don't need your help. Just watch and like stay out of my way. And that's kind of how she is with the family. Like, I'll tell everybody what to do and not accept anybody's input. And we can have that problem right in our church callings. If you've ever had someone in a presidency who's like, I'm just going to hold all the stuff tight to me, and I'll let you do like a nominal thing, but I'm not going to let you do anything that's creative or ideas. You're just going to execute for me, and if you don't do it right, I'm going to take it back. And that's not healthy. No one likes that.
One other thing about her is that it seems like she's a little hesitant to give praise, a little stinting with her praise. You know, she's very strict, and I think it best maybe expressed by Louisa, who's the kind of strong one in her song, where she, you know, she's really afraid of failing and feeling like if she fails, she's going to be a failure to everyone. And I think that comes partially from her, not being very validating of the successes that they're having and saying like, you're doing amazing things, like you're going out and saving and moving churches and rescuing flocks and doing all these great things every day, and I'm grateful for you for what you're doing. So I think that was part of my message for me was you can validate the good people are doing even when you have high standards or expectations.
Yeah, and having that balance. I really liked Louisa's story arc of being like, you can do it all, but that doesn't mean you should do it all, and you should get breaks, and that's good. Like, that's important. I felt like there were a lot of positive psychological principles in this story.
Yeah. All the side characters were like, so somebody said earlier that the characters didn't, and maybe it wasn't here, maybe it was somebody else, but I remember hearing somebody say, I didn't feel like the side characters were developed enough. And to be honest, like, I thought it was pitch perfect. And the reason I say that is because it was
pretty
like,
good for a 90-minute film.
For a 90-minute film, can you do much more? Right. And it's like, Louisa is strong and she has to carry everything and she has an arc. And that's amazing. And the one who can hear everything.
Not as developed. I thought that Julieta and Augustine. So Mirabelle's parents, I thought, were a little underdeveloped.
That's fair.
Yeah, they were just kind of there.
I thought Felix, also the uncle, maybe is a little underdeveloped as well. But
He's the best dancer, though.
Augustine and Felix are both not magical.
He's the best dancer.
Yeah, he's a good dancer. It's true.
Right.
I thought they were underdeveloped, but I thought otherwise.
Okay, my question was about Peppa, the ant who has the weather power. Mm-hmm. So the grandma's all about, let's make your power help the community. How is her power helping the community? Do we get her really, really mad every time we need rain on the crops?
No, because
okay, somebody go bother Peppa for a while. We need about an inch of rain today.
She was a little unstable often, I thought. Portrayed a little...
in some ways, I think she was kind of comic relief, and that's not the role. Like, when you go to the door, you don't want it to be like, congratulations, you can look like a clown anytime you want. Like, that is not what you were aiming for.
You're Sokka.
I felt kind of bad for her. Right, exactly. It's like, oh, goody.
It's true. I think they tried to make some of these side characters very particular... like incarnations of psychological problems, like the even when they called Isabella the golden child, like instantly when they called her that in like the first song, I was like, I'm not gonna like her, and I didn't until her song, and I was like, oh wow, right? So Isabella is kind of the incarnation of this toxic perfectionism, and Luisa is the incarnation of the strong silent stuff. And those moments kind of break down when you have like 9 side characters. But I think it was maybe a good choice to sort of throw a bunch of them out, but then really focus in on Bruno's arc, on Luisa's arc, and on Isabella's arc, and Mirabelle, of course. So there weren't too many things to juggle, but I really liked those, even if Isabella's moment to sort of come to herself felt a little too let it go to me again.
It was a bit.
No.
Well,
I read a really interesting perspective, and I'll let you go next, Nathan, because I know you have things to say about her. But I read an interesting article on a blog called Latter-day Saint Geek, where they talked about Isabella from the perspective of being a different ending to the mean girl story, because, right, she's the mean sister. She's the one she's the mean girl. And she's going to get back at you, and you better not get in her way. She's got everything perfect. And instead of it ending with her dress being ruined and we'll show you're a terrible person, instead she has an opportunity to change, which doesn't happen often to the mean girl in films. She's just like ends with her dress being ruined or the boy dumps her or whatever. So I liked that.
I like that perspective.
That's cool. I like that.
I have thoughts, but Nathan was totally next.
Song lyrics, I know. So
yeah, I was gonna say, with all the positive messages in the story, I love the analogy of the cracks in the house when their relationships are cracked. One of the real weaknesses I thought was so they needed to have problems in order to overcome them and to heal, but the problems that they chose fit right into the expressive individualism worldview. That's just a term people use for the idea that the purpose of life, what defines the good life, is to be able to manifest your inner self, express it in whatever way you feel like, and there's a kernel of truth to every worldview, and so that one can appeal to us in some ways in life, but it can be contradictory to the gospel in many ways because it makes us self-seeking, and some of the lyrics are ambiguous, can be taken multiple ways. But in Luisa's song, she says, I feel like I'm worthless if I can't be of service. Well, it makes it sound like service is a bad thing. She says, I wish I could shake the crushing weight of expectations. Isabella says, I should just do whatever I feel in the moment. I wish I could just, I want something true in the moment. What if who you want to be is imperfect? So we just wanted to do whatever she wants. Bruno says, he says to Peppa, to his sister, I love you, so let it in, let it out, let it go. In other words, defining love, you could take this as defining love as accepting whatever person does, no matter what it is. And Mirabelle says, the climax at the end is very expressive individualist when the high point is her seeing herself. And so all of those have kernels of truth. I had a perfectionism complex when I was a little kid, and I had to learn what grace really meant. But it's not so much even the one film, but the cumulative effect when every film hammers this over and over again, that the purpose is to do whatever you want or to express yourself, other people's needs be hanged. And so it's kind of one of those things where this pattern of expressive individualism is one point in the whole arc of films in the last several decades in our culture, and it just kind of seems to lend towards the tendency for people to just seek out their own interests.
That's true. I think Isabella's song could have been stronger if it had played more on. There are some moments in it where it's, her and her sister realizing that they both thought each other, they didn't understand each other, right? Mirabelle thought Isabella's life was perfect and was jealous and mad at her, but really Isabella felt trapped by it, by the expectations, and so she would snap at Mirabelle, and so I thought it could have leaned more into that, like healing that relationship instead of being like, oh, I can be whoever I want and I should do whatever I want.
I thought Lisa's song. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, Daniel. It makes me think, what would be some alternative problems that could have been written into the story, and maybe the opposite problem of someone using their powers too selfishly. I mean, those are both problems, and I would argue which one is more prevalent today.
I thought Luisa's song did a better. Her arc did a better job of reconciling those desire to be of service and also desire to enjoy yourself and have and focus on yourself. I thought that was a better reconciliation of those, because at the end she's still doing all the good things she's doing. She's just not beating herself up over everything and feeling that level of like perfectionism that she needs to do everything perfectly. But she still is serving and being part of the community and being part of her family. And so I thought that was a better reconciliation of those tendencies than with Isabella's song and art.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I on this topic, so Nathan, I like the context, because I think that helps me understand it a little better. I think it's better than a lot of Disney movies in that regard, and at the same time, it's still not even getting close to, and I'll be the one to invoke his name, Brandon Sanderson, where it's like, or you could just be a better person, and that's the moral drama, right? Like I don't see a whole lot of that, except for maybe a little bit with Abuela, but she has to have like a revelation and realize some stuff. I think that part of what I would love to see more of is like, you could just choose to be a good person. And sometimes it's hard and you still just have to do it. That's not a storyline that's ever written into most Disney movies, at least not anymore. Right. I don't know, maybe. Anyway.
We did see a little bit of it when Mirabelle decides she's going to go try to hug hug Isabella, right?
Isabella.
Where she's like, I don't want to do this, but it's the right thing to do. So
that was my favorite line, was when she screams, Isabella! I have to do that.
Or I would say Bruno also, when first of all, when he chooses to use his prophecy, when he said, I'm not going to do this anymore, but he does it for the good of the family. And then when he comes and stands up to Abuela and in Mirabelle's defense, I thought both of those were good examples of that as well.
Yeah.
I think Bruno is one of the best developed characters, and I think he's great. I love his arc.
Good arc, interesting character,
great
like
song
so
that's
fun.
stuck in your head for like a week.
Oh yeah,
my kids are still singing it. They love it. I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
I'd like to push back just a little bit on the idea that all of this expressive, you mentioned that expressive individualism has kernels of truth,
right.
But I've always been, and maybe I'm just reading these Disney movies incorrectly, that when you recognize what you are, then you can serve the community better. Whether that is as a princess or like a warrior monk, like in Mulan or something, like it. That it's not just, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want. It's when you recognize. I feel like Disney's doing a good job of exploring the tension between serving a community and just being who you are without regard to them. I think Elsa's a great example. I don't know how practical it is to be able to control snow and ice as the queen.
Well, I think it's important. People get mad about the Let It Go song with Elsa, but it's important to realize at that point of the film, she's the villain. Like, she's singing this song, and she ends up being wrong. to go off on her own and be away from everybody, right? She's wrong.
And that song was originally written when she was the villain, and that was the song that made everybody be like, oh, maybe this could be a sister redemption arc sort of thing that completely changed it for the better. And I think that worked out pretty well.
I love the arc. I love that change in Frozen. There's the 3 views that Elsa has. I'm going to suppress my powers. I'm going to not even try to control them, and then I'm going to control them with love. Of course, the good message is the one at the end. It's a great analogy for chastity. I would just say there's maybe some slight artistic irresponsibility by making the most appealing world, the one that got the catchiest song,
the middle one.
Worldview. Yeah.
Well, and I would go back to Nathan's point from earlier, which is I don't have a problem with expressive individualism. And I think part of this with Disney is that it's marketing to a certain segment of kids that are learning to be themselves and learning to figure out what's special about them.
Bonnie Corden's talk and conference was about knowing your identity helps you decide what to do with your life.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful, and it is needed. The only thing that I'm noticing is it's the drum that constantly gets beat, right? And it's not the only one out there. Yeah. And Disney, I think that Disney movies are far, far, far better than Disney Channel movies on the same topic, where it's like, I'm a teenager. What should I do? Should I be a good person or should I fit in? I'll fit in and then I'll be a good person. It'll all work out fine, right? Like it's a disaster. It's a train wreck, right? Yeah. My kids love these movies and I'm like, oh, this is so bad. I think that's what I meant when I was joking about Dead Poets Society. I think whether we're talking about expressive individualism or we're talking about conflict with authority, those are good messages. You need to I intend Dead Poets Society has always been one that fundamentally altered my worldview, really, really formative experience. And there's also a point at which you have to I want the next movie that also says, and then there are times when authority is good and helps you and you need to make peace with it. Most of the time your parents are not going to be crazy people.
Neil A. Maxwell liked to quote C.S. Lewis, where he says the devil likes to get us to run around with fire extinguishers during a flood. Is the biggest problem in the world today that people work too hard to fulfill their duties. Yeah. So when you only lean one way on a ship, it's going to tip over.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent analogy.
My argument is that this might be a fire, though, because the family is a family that is serving the community, right? So we are dealing with people who are under pressure, who are keep my emotions in check. I have to be happy all the time. Yeah. I have to be this perfect princess. I have to always be strong and do everything right. So the type of story they're telling doesn't lend well to that, right? They're not.
Right. They establish it as a legitimate case where this is the lesson that needs to be learned. Yeah,
but
in this context,
because of that, I thought it worked better than some other movies, Disney movies with the expressive individualism, because it was all in the context of this family that is always there, is always prominent, and in the end is healed and reconciled. And so it's not. And I love Moana, but Moana kind of leaving her community and going off, for instance.
Junior knows best.
Yeah. And this didn't have. It had some of that. Mirabelle there's elements of that, but I think less of it, I thought, than some other Disney movies where because Abuela and the other family members all play a major role and it reconcile. I thought it did a better job of keeping those things in together than.
And I love the family focus. I think the family focus is really, really good. But in my mind, it's I could have seen the climax of this thing being you have to give up the miracle. And then you realize that the miracle is actually your family that you've built and the love that you have. And that's the Sandersonian, sacrifice that is made. And all of a sudden the candle fades happily into the distance because it's no longer needed. Right. And we've learned the big lesson. I could see that have being and again, I think this was far and away better than a lot of things that I've seen from Disney and certainly from the Disney Channel. I still felt like there were deeper things that it could have hit at. And again, it's not fair to hit on Encanto when, again, it's the spectrum of films in society.
The cumulative
I just don't
effect.
see a lot of people. That's right. This isn't. There just aren't many movies I can point to show my kids to be and this is why you should obey authority, right? Or this is why you should, do your duty, or keep your commitments. There just aren't very many of those because they're not a popular topic.
But if they lose their powers, there can't be a sequel. So. You've got to keep them.
Yeah, or Disney shorts, which are the best.
Actually, I think Pixar is actually, some of the Pixar movies have done a better job of that. I think if you think about Inside Out or you think of Soul, there's some very good ones where there's responsibility, there's duty, there's other, I think, responsibilities other than kind of expressing yourself. And so I think Pixar has done a very good job in some of their best movies with that.
Well, and I should also say, like, at a certain point, I also just need to be able to enjoy a movie. Like,
Right.
frankly, there are some movies that are just funny and enjoyable, and they don't have deep messages, and that's okay, right?
That's
And like,
okay.
there are books and scenes, and like, so I don't think that the message is every single book needs to be about duty and like all of that stuff. It's more just like a very obvious, glaring gap in our societal dialogue and like pop culture.
Yep. So let's we're nearing kind of our time. So let's do a little bit of closing. We like to give it 3 different ratings. First one is for content. I don't think there's any questionable content. I'd rate this a celestial movie in terms of content. I don't think
The only caveat I'd
feel
give,
bad about my grandma watching with me, right?
the only caveat I'd give is I know some of my kids would absorb the angst and start to look for problems that aren't there in their own life, but that you have to know your kid.
I mean, there's not very many movies about coming of age movies that are not about angst. So
Right. I also have a 4-year-old who was terrified of Bruno for like 3 minutes and then met him and was like, "Oh no, he's great. He's fine." Like she was like, "He's a demon." And then the green eyes went away and she was like, "Okay, no, he's my favorite. It's
he
great."
had some real Rasputin vibes at the
Yeah,
beginning.
exactly. That's a good way to put that. Yes, exactly.
Okay, second rating is for artistic merit. We're doing 1 to 5. We're blossoms. We haven't decided on a unit because if they make things pretty, apricot blossoms. What do you guys think? Where would you rate this one?
5 popcorn balls.
I would
5
say
popcorn balls on our
3
apricot
blossoms.
tree.
I just feel like it wasn't as polished as some Disney movies. Like Carl said, this felt like the draft needed just one
Story-wise?
division. Yeah.
But the
Yeah, but
prettiness
I'm still
is
going to
there.
split the difference and say four popcorn balls.
Yeah, I'd go for it as well.
I'd give it
And then the
for
final
me,
one is for gospel connections.
Oh, can I say artistic merit? I would say, for me, what pushes over the top is the dancing, the music, the singing, the way they use different styles.
true.
I thought that's what pushes it over in the edge for me.
It's
That's
true.
true. The fact that there
Fair
was
enough.
actual dancing in this movie is part of why I gave it 4 blossoms instead of 3, because that. How often does actual live, and I'm sure if we were Colombian anthropologists, we'd be like, oh, they were using real, because that's the kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
that-
I've been
Yeah,
watching
yeah,
documentaries on YouTube. They did lots of research. It's amazing.
Well,
yeah.
and which
So that's to be commended.
Yes.
I was
And then
going to say
the final
earlier.
one was a rating for gospel connections, 1 to 5 apricots. What do you think?
4.
4. Yeah.
Plenty of stuff to
4.
talk about.
Solid.
Solid B. Okay.
No, but like
I'm
good,
only
high
5
quality
only because
messages.
I thought that it handled the themes really, really well. I see people's concerns about individualism in it, but I thought compared to other recent Disney movies, I thought it handled those really well, and I thought that some of the songs were really powerful and really resonated with me on the kind of message of them, especially waiting on a miracle. So I'd give it 5, but I can see the case for 4 as well.
Yeah, I would give it 5 as well. I thought it handled everything really well, even though I had my issues were with pacing and stuff. But the messages I rather enjoyed. Expressive individualism aside.
All right. Okay, well, we're going to sign off now. We can go around and tell where you can find more from us. You can follow my writing on lizbusby.com and find me on Twitter and Facebook. Nathan?
You can download my free gospel handouts and redesign scriptures for free at nathanrichardson.com.
Daniel?
You can find me on Facebook or Twitter. I also blog on Nabu Neighbor and also write for Public Square magazine on occasion as well.
Hey, Ben?
I am on Radical Civility. That's my podcast, and I sometimes also write for Facebook or Public Square is what I was thinking of, and then Facebook came out. But yeah, I do all the things.
And Carl?
I am more of a Luddite than the rest of you all. I'm just on Facebook, but you're always welcome to come tangle with me there if you'd like to. It's good times on my wall.
Fantastic. This has been Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree. Go out there and seek after everything virtuous, lovely, of good report, or praiseworthy.